where she continues her work in legal advocacy. Thank you, Elin Bite. Sun apanina Thelma Ramthinglim. Ramthinglim, he PhD research scholar from Department of English, Delhi University, and she is also a guest faculty assistant professor at Netaji Subhas University of Technology, Dwarka. Soon Dr. Deborah Inaya. Dr. Deborah earned her PhD in sociology from Indian Institute of Technology, Kanpur, Uttar Pradesh in 2021. She has attended several national and international seminars presenting a paper related to women and society. She currently works as an assistant professor in Department of Sociology, University of Allahabad. Namtadi nga chanem ngai mi ania amahi. Le khatin tak khomnisin kumsang ni le pari 2008 kan Miss HSA Shillong alo ni vengatani. So thank you everyone, especially the moderator and panelists for today. We hope that this webinar will be an eye opener for everyone so that we can work together in the future for the upliftment of women. Thank you. Now I give time to the moderator.
Ole, Deborah, thank you so much. In ring debate, let voice to na program hi. So let's silvang inum sila from it's a very timely and critical intervention that we are doing. And it is my great pleasure to welcome each one of you. And I have very esteemed panels with different experiences today in this panel. And I'm lucky. Though I'm among a sea of women today, I think it's going to be a very, very productive and fruitful conversation. So today's conversation will be on, like Deborah has mentioned, on culture on trial. Can customs and tradition be women inclusive? As your moderator today, I invite you all for this discussion, not just with curiosity, but with courage. And as we know that culture is often described as the soul of people rooted in memory, passed through generations, we honor what connects us to the past. We also confront a pressing question. Can the custom include, uplift, and empower women? This conversation that we are going to have today is it's not about rejection, but reflection. It is also asking whether tradition can evolve without losing its essence and whether inclusivity can be woven into the very fabric of cultural identity. We have with us today the voices that will challenge, inspire, and perhaps even provoke. It's going to be a very difficult conversation at times, and also it's going to be a very interesting conversation at other moments. I know that our conversation will delve into. So let's begin not with answers for now, but with an open minds and honest question. So, like Deborah has mentioned, we have three esteemed panelists. We have a lawyer, we have an academician, we also have a youth practitioner who has been advocating for gender equity and whose work has been delving on that. So first of all, I'm going to go directly to our professor, Dr. Deborah D, for discussing on what she thinks about what our topic is about, and also my question after she introduced on what her thoughts on the topic is. One of the questions that I want to ask directly is also how can societies like us navigate the modernization process, and how should we reimagine our customs or traditions to support gender equity and inclusion, and what needs to be discarded. I'm not sure what we need to discard, but what needs to be discarded or what needs to be relooked in that based on the experiences and the research that we have. So I now invite Dr. Deborah D for her thoughts on this.
Thank you so much, Mr. Denise, for taking up this session. And also, first of all, I would like to convey my thanks to Ms. Deborah, who is the project coordinator of RWUS. And also, I would like to convey my thanks to Azim Premji Foundation, which is because of this collaboration with RWUS that we are able to have this talk today. So yes, as the moderator mentioned, the topic of our talk, culture on trial, can customs and traditions to be women inclusive? So I think first of all, culture on trial, I think the topic is very catchy and it is a very, very, important aspect that needs to be tackled today. Because as uh, I am going to, talk about customs and traditions as well. So there I will also be bringing in about what culture exactly is from a very, academical point of view. So as far as the topic of our talk is concerned, culture on trial, can customs and traditions be women inclusive? So with our talks today with the other two panelists, I feel that, we can come up to certain conclusions which will enable us to question more regarding the customs and cultural practices that we have in our own tribal societies here in the northeastern region. So just before I move forward among the participants, I saw Ning Lun Hang Hal. So I would just like to extend my heartfelt thanks to her because she is a person, with her updates and with every things that she posts in the social media. She has been a very good encourager, even though we have not met personally. Zu kalom thu kalazuk shanisin la uling ning lun atsunga. So as I think, as the project coordinator mentioned that we'll have to speak majority in English. So I'll just continue mostly in English as I keep on answering the question that our moderator has posed to me. Okay. So yes, as already mentioned, I would like all of us here to have an open mind, a mind which is open to criticism, critical thinking, because this is a very, very current need of the time, especially in a tribal society like ours. As far as women, women's status is concerned, it's and often there is a comparison between women in tribal societies and women across other parts of the country. Hingang comparison umpathin Asian laktu or mostly conclusion ni laktu imani women in tribal societies are empowered, but is it really ti hai vel kavoisun ko may hungshil pay dingan so now I will focus on the question that was posed to me. So I would like to divide, that question into three parts. Okay, so the question I would just like to repeat. It goes like this: how can societies like ours navigate the modernization process, and how should we reimagine our customs and traditions to support gender equity and inclusion, and what needs to be discarded based on our experiences? So firstly, I would like to bring in, what modernization is, basic as that, so that all of my, especially, my arguments would be so that I can have some context regarding my arguments. So, and also being a teacher, it's always good to explain before diving into our main point about the history, like the context from which we are talking about. Otherwise, everything is doomed for misinterpretation. So, I would just like to take this one definition by Niels Melzer, a renowned scholar. He mentioned that modernization is a complex set of changes that take place almost in every part of society as it attempts to be industrialized. Complex set of changes, it includes changes not only in the economy, but also in the polity, in the way of our thinking, in the way of how our social institutions are organized, right? So it encompasses all those changes and modernization includes those changes in every part of society as it tries to be a more industrialized society in the future. Right, so that's the definition of modernization. And coming to mostly, the type of works that are there in, especially in the northeastern region, we have scholars, especially in my thesis, I use largely the work of, Professor Laldena, T.S. Gangte, Pushil Rokum, Tingnay Chong Kipken, and others. So in all these things, when we look at modernization in the tribal society, right, including this Mar society, so we trace back the coming of modernization as early as the 1900s, like 1920s and the 1930s. Because here it is during this time that we see, certain, let's say, student organizations, youth organizations that have come up. Like we have the HSA in Mar context, HYA, and in the 1980s, ultimately, we have the HWA also. And at the same time, in other tribal societies, especially in Churchanpur, in the Pite community, also in the Kuki community, we have certain other form of modern organization that have sprung up during this particular time. So as so from this modernization process, what I'm trying to bring in, trying to connect it with customs and traditions, is that when we look at, these tribal societies, if I may specifically refer to Mar society here, we see that, societies, even if we want or not, societies just in the process just imbibe in all these changes like modernization, and that is why instead of our traditional society where we have the lull, right, we have the konbol, we have the valupa, which is not very structurally organized. Because of modernization, we start having this form of organization, which is like the HSA, HYA, and so on. So in all these things, we see that we are very much, our society has very much imbibed these modern elements that we see at present in the society. So as I had mentioned, at the same time, as we see the coming up of these modern institutions, right, our thoughts, okay, our values in the society, right, as if we give example like Lomgaina, if we look at, like we often see the Kutlang leaders, whenever they give us some lecture or some teaching, they would often say that tlongay na hi ama ang kaantano mo. It's not same as before because tlongay na value hom hi ingay kumingay po mo tano. We do not give much importance to tlongay na anymore as compared to those days. Di hi Asian lakiti mo. Tutun kazuk against tinani lawin ana tu kanghai ka til ni ani tu mo til fact komani ni tu because modernization na hung uma kan economy tlakleng na abikin in nakita definition of an industrialized ahung needing kan economy tlakleng na hung uma economy tun ay fakle don zong na hai ka to hin ko to live present ading to call center dam to ko ngai da a source of livelihood kong ka ahung danglam vonga kanghai hung danglam na kan, as our source of our source of employment also changes. It brings changes in our values, our way of thinking, our beliefs, and all this, right? So our knowledge, our view, our perspective, everything, we get influenced by everything, every external factors, internal factors that are going on in this world. And now we have globalization, right? So we are affected by this globalization process in our way of thinking, in our lifestyle, everything. So it's like that. Example but if we really think more, if Mars society, right, as I have given example, also other societies, if we easily accept, okay, that the transition from these traditional institutions to modern institutions, okay, if we easily accept the substitution of the Lal chieftainship, right, the substitution of it through democratic form of election, like we have the village council now, right, institutions hai HYA ti hai mo HSA ti hai kana hung substitute committee thi a function hai a role hai and hin Kalekan Kangai Pupoka easily in a accept and it's a two command. We are standing against this form of modern institutions 18 is nobody complained that okay, our traditional, I would say majority of us, let me correct myself, majority of us, accept that, from traditional, those type of, simple institutions to more structured institutions in hue and cry nei no nito ani danang ding nei accept. So at the same time when we try to bring in women's status in relation to culture and tradition again unle accept hey no ay neyam mo tivel ka, it's a question that I want to pose here. Unle tunitun accept hey no dam ay neytun unle a bias taluni no mani changes, we accept changes in some aspect without even questioning, but changes in certain aspects we do not accept the kahong nin so. So at the same time, modernity 80 high and to in a big takin women's status 80 high and women empowerment 80 more gender equality equity 80 terms sa tam taluni so feminism 80 mo hingay po hi anle hing dominated hen so these are all modern idea mo modern thoughts mo ani committee 80 tayani so to na India as a large feminism ahung umlim lai khantu kaka argument anasani to feminism ti hi western concept ania India to accept no in feminist tam argument komani kamo kaka ang khana to lain an letu hin women feminism 80 women equal status 80 equity 80 hing hai hi anle nakita kong tita ang kan modernization na niya western concept niya ay nilay to angay no ay nilay to true no 80d mo kang ang realizing kan anle till change dang hay to ay accept siya anle change dang law change dang tool hay accept hay law inay kuman minti lay pam ka ngay to na din to na poy mo katia tutulay tun Tituta point si apan na ding chun zuk in modern zuk fepe kata apan na intinam a culture le traditional gender equity le inclusion thing in a ending anati akan culture definition kom kazuk pek numa the chun customs le traditions especially sociological analysis kung pek numa nito culture 80 hin EB Taylor anthropology sa amanati danto complex whole mo. Complex whole, meaning culture includes everything, our knowledge, our beliefs, our morals, our architecture, everything. It includes things also, not only about our values, but things, how we construct our house, how we construct our, how we express our creativity. All of this, it includes the teenage. So among these, culture and tradition are very important component. Inside culture, customs and traditions are very important component if we look at from a very academical viewpoint. From a very sociological viewpoint, if we look at tradition or if we look at broadly society, what is society? Society anendanin most of the scholars see society as a web of social relationship. Society is constituted by social relationship. Society ay hi enlighten na kutlang enlighten na form ani antived la tanito enlighten na ti to economy komnisila politics komnisila culture ting komnisila inkim ni enlighten na to takay to kahong form ani antinito. So at the same time, to lie enlighten na to intinam simi na it's a pattern formation. More repeated behavior and tinokan ito. Example nung pelang. Asan to hita in tradition umdan ka ishi dingan nito. Changes sa umteya ma no ti ka clarity mi pek dingan nilay kan. Claiming technical met kalazuk fairnessin la. So let me just bring in example of pattern formation, that in sociology we argue so much. So it's like, they go back to as far as simple societies, maybe the Paleolithic period, maybe the Neolithic period. So how sociologists explain society is that, in society, in the beginning, society is a place where there is not much institutionalization. When institutionalization occurs, the propensity, the ability to bring change becomes very difficult. So in society, there was a situation in very simple society, let's say nomadic societies even. So there, what do we do in order to survive? We go to the jungle, we go to places where we can find something to eat. So that is the behavior, right? So every day we start going there. Okay, we start going in search of our food for survival. So at the end, after generation to generation, that particular behavior, going out to get food, that become institutionalized, and eventually that become our economy, right? In the same manner, in order to administer, if there are lots and lots of people, in order to administer, in order for flow and a good administration, this polity came about. In the same manner, the family, in the same manner, religion and all these other aspects keeps coming up, right? So to the institutions hai po ending into pattern formation, repeated behavior ani anti ni cho. So coming to tradition hai ko mi mana ite chun chu AP le puhan mo anno le amma a society lo umtahan repeatedly until tho hai ani ni chu mo atuda min any markai context ebi in tribal societies cho he harvest festival ai ur hi. So during that time harvest chadeu de wan mu khan, in order to celebrate mo khan khanan la ma ju tu hin traditional dances eti hai khan ni payenta jo. So something, those were repeated behavior in the very beginning, which became more and more institutionalized and which became a part of our identity now, which we hold very dear, which we give so much of emotions mo kana tradition hin emotional part umlay khan. If someone criticize it, mo a identity ni lekhan, someone criticize an ngai thai non ta zo mo a attached to the lekhan asan to hi mar hai thodan ani mar hai ap le puhan a lo thodan ani ti khan ai pom hetan ta chun tribal dang hai khum kha ang khan pattern formation ti kha kha ani chun lastly last part of the last part of the question kha intinam hi discarding dam no tivel ka chuna ki phat le ela discussion pe ya khan don kata. To as to conclude this first question mo to kazuk shilnum chuna ki ta kan modernization factor, modernization process le hin a society hai ko may escape kan pay the no need so to lay chun anle to the tradition ai to ka modernity, modern organization sai a accept le anle he think panga mo tradition certain group of people high voice dam anleng no dam ani mo anole anni like certain group of people friendly low zong an situation hai ngai to low zong dam in case shui na high dam a low ne ya anle khang kha khataga in to ka in case shui na ka certain section of people high ka include vedinga mo change kha antak le no ti ting kha first question ka conclude nan question booking hong zong ni ros ekalomi.
Thank you, Deborah Lomim Talo. A discussion on Tokan, obviously, Deborah has highlighted about the epistemological understanding of how culture is. Thank you for highlighting on that. And the one thing that's really interesting was on the selective change. I think that is also selective justice at times in terms of our customs traditions. So I think that is something that will come back. So like we accept some modern institutions, but we don't accept certain aspects. So I think that is a very interesting trial that we also going to see across the our discussion. So the other thing that I just want to mention is that there will be many question in a haika chat box akan hong topa in la nakipale topa. If we have time to discuss, we'll try to discuss about it. But if we don't have even time to discuss, but I think our speakers can respond to it in the upcoming days also. But RWUS is planning to kind of do something around that. So I'm gonna go on to the next speaker, which is Ellen Bite. Ellen, I don't know that. So Ellen comes from a very legal perspective. So I want to ask a question on a very legal understanding of identity, because I think it's a cultural identity that we are trying to talk on. So my specific question is that we are at a crossroad in terms of culture and tradition. We have our cultural, our traditional identity. At the same time, we are a citizen of India under one specific constitution. Obviously, we have our special status in a constitution like the Article 371 Part C, more particularly for people in Manipur, for other states also, where we also have a certain say on our customs. Not just for Zoltan Atlak, we also have for the Nagas, we have for many other people. So my question to you, Ellen, is that we are at the crossroad with unique customs and traditions as a tribal on one hand, and legal system existing as a citizen of India on the other hand. How do we navigate this conundrum and at the same time preserve and reform our customs so that it continues to be relevant, so that it survives? So I would like to invite Ellen to answer this question at the same time also give certain ideas or discussion or what her thought is on our topic. So I now invite Ellen BK for these thoughts. Thank you so much.
Hello, am I audible? First thing, I would like to thank the authorities for giving me this opportunity, wherein we are discussing a very important yet sensitive topic, I would say. I would like to thank the authorities for that. And then let's go directly to your question. First, I would like to say that uh, customs is one of the most important sources of law. More framers of the constitution hain law shim dawan frame khan customs hi sources of law and mang thil poi mo takani chun second na ding chun nakita how to part the mission am yung don kamo. How can societies like ours navigate the modernization process, and how should we reimagine their equity and income? We are at the crossroad with unique customs and traditions as tribal citizen of India on the other. How do we navigate this conundrum? Kafar sinung answer kata. Hihitu, in short, the law of the land will always prevail from customary law. Asan tu hi statement ka support natin hin case law pakat hong explain ka duma. It is called the Shah Banu case, which was in the year 1958. Now, what happens in this case was there was a Muslim couple. They got divorced. I'll just summarize it because we don't have enough time. They got divorced. So Muslims law, we know that by applying triple talaq, the husband can divorce the wife anytime. And then after divorce, he paid a maher or dower from our point of view, she team banding to marhayin pasalin may makpat le cheng sang nga tuta eitan butharakan mo cheng sang nga in amak dingani ti khan zi kani khang char khan ni khom kha apasalin maher pe ka ama kelani kha handung khan anu me ka kum upat kan ta chu khan amale ma she was unable to sustain herself and the needs of her children. So what she did was she approached lower courts. Kahan courts ever approach kan the courts kan section 125 of CRPC nuya kan maintenance of a hini apasalain token because amaka pitaran taso pasal ledin chen hung kan the skills kom nelo housewife rin what ka now apasalin livelihood provide tu takin acheta sias now haile kan amak ta si khan so ama ta ding chen so option na umutan oni so khalai khan 125 CRPC maintenance kha chu khan maintenance of hin ta so kata khan court khom khan Indian citizen ani na khan allow grand ye ani 125 CRPC hi to hin BNSS athara khan section 144 and ta kata khan maintenance of hin court in the grand khan apasal kha alung oil win Supreme Court in short initial the Supreme Court ever approach and that's Supreme Court bulakhan kani apasal arguments to kani hi Muslims kan na Muslims customary law kan ne ya chu dung zui chun nu me kan mak ta chun chu thunung thuma mo talawin kut kan sop ta tiang ti khan kha chang san khan awa changani ami ruk chu Supreme Court in a judgment at an imashil anupe kha regardless of one's religion, individual's religion, customs, practices more. Indian citizen Anina Khan, section 125 of CRPC ka entitled entitled customary laws hainekin land of the law he prevailed because regardless of our caste, creed, religion, mo any to India mi any nalay khan Kika inin entitlement ini hi kasukshil num nasan su num may tamtak kiramin kalaw witness sa mo inkat customary law hin abak hi umno ang inan ngay tu nito num may su may ding pasal ne ka en sinuy na patriarchal society ni bakla num may pasal ne ka en sinuy na ini le kumni ngata luwalaw tak ni ay sila customary law hi elang mang tumsham shamani kita kahin no may voice na shin sing na katito option ay ni tingay ti customary law eva muhuy na ni tak mo atalu the kalam chun petty things they will settle na din hin so customary law hi acha ka ti asan chu customary law athil tu me chu settlement ani tin la ya in tho khan mo settlement char ani chulai chun rape ti haidam hi customary law in settle heu palai ti hi ke chu kan la wani asan chu rape ti haidam hin a victim hi ani a considering any dana chun chu in rem na he ngai poi mo chingai ti tin lai pi le pu hai dan milo simple kan hi tiang khan pomin mo in rem ding zong wat ye thoni bu hai vok hai that thang in khang khan lung o e tu mani ami ruk chu what about the victim mo any nule pale accuse hai chu khan bon zu fa khomel ami ruk chu what about the victim kha pa kha tu en tena alo su lu tu pa kha mani nu ngak le nga no le lam pui lai mu sin la khom e chu nga thil chno tak tho tu chu shi alung ri man hoi no ding a traumatize char ta ding ani khale khan a victim mentally ko traumatized ding ani a provide no more khang kha ashil sa no ni chu khale khan victim ta dinga in chatak khangai tu phodin la nu le pa hai khomin mo khotlang khom ni sin la tun entenan pok so hai lam dem chu alo shi alo report no hai chen khom zelin tang thainan chu very serious offenses mo khale khan customary law settle trading chen hi uma tingeti chu ba ka tun entenan court case hai khom hin family issues lem lem hi chu hin chu chen lem chu builak no pe mo court direct in until hakani mo asan chu nu mei chu a standpoint ye fi talo customary law khan kholai muna mei ti khai shi talo ni chu khale khan course sun chu a rights ami consider pe le khan customary law chu very male centric frame na chun a customary law hila zu shil samet lang criticize ani no mo to dik asian lem so well ania any a law mu da nai talking customary law tu ta if follow hai hi tin la yang thoka si malo ni mo how many years ago commission tano khale khan things have changed from there to now more khale khan how to pa coming Dennis coming question among them kha and at the same time preserve and reform our customs so that it continues to be relevant king hi ke chu preserve thei ani chi hin ka shi tano asan chu thilan thleng ya tam ta khalai khan hilai customary pile puin dan mo nu pei hai kha ina umeni asan chu that time our community were hunters more that was the only source of livelihood we have so basically we have no other option but to go out in the forest and hunt to provide food for the family and for themselves. So women, we know we are more physically weaker, more compared to men. So obviously, men pasal hai ka anfi ani inka ramwak ti vel inka khalai khan every a customary law khalai munai fo lokha the pasal kha upper hen pe kan male centric but now the tables have turned to you know have slightly turned more khale khan nu mei tu lam in so a society home witness trading nu mei in pasalan som ti hai ko mom and now hypo po one equal ti hai ko mom khata ka khan ke ka question to customary law hi antanata patriarchal centric ani le hin irrelevant ding in change tak hi chu ke so a har sa kari hi ela apangai a roots takha ela patriarchy takha ela det numan chun chumo a har sa ka ring khat khat ke ka ngai dan chu po chun ros
Thank you, Ellen. Yeah, Ellen has, I think, brought a very interesting discussion on bringing the Shabano case. I think we have all known this. If you have studied sociology or some gender studies, I think that is very crucial in understanding where we stand, where our custom stands. Ellen mentioned, what is the objective of our custom law about justice at the same time. So how do we also see that codification process is something that we are going to discuss a little bit later, and then the reformation, because if it's not going to be relevant, how do we reform entirely, something that will also have this next discussion on. But in the meanwhile, we'll keep that aside. I'd like to invite Thelma to actually discuss on the topic, why we have this, what is her thought on this. And my question to Thelma at the same time is that within the academic discourse, are we critical enough? Like Elena has mentioned, like it's the truth. We are talking about truth, but at the same time, are we critical enough in our customs and traditions, for example, in fields like gender studies or in cultural anthropology? And how receptive are we as a community to criticism so that our customs can survive with contextual change if we still want our customs? So for this contextual change, so I would like to invite Thelma for for her thoughts on this.
Thank you so much, Dennis, sir. First of all, I would like to extend my gratitude to RWUS and Deborah ma'am and her team, and also specifically to Dennis, sir, for organizing this very, very important event. And my colleagues I mean, they have discussed so many things. Kay man shilnum ka how darunito, like Dr. Deborah kanang shila, tutun Elin kong manang shila, ka PhD research thesis like homan zom na umvongan to na to question donding pega ka umlay kan areng ram kan so ka comment but maybe later on when we open round for Q&A mo kan, maybe I can join and I can share some of my thoughts on that. So kay tuta hong team no kata way kat kay kadon ding hi within the academic examining our customs and tradition in fields like gender studies and cultural anthropology, and how receptive are we as a community to criticism so that our custom can survive with contextual change. And yeah, hita kahin panin don tum kata. First of all, hi tuta he question he kamu masatakan. The first thing that came to my mind was gender studies and tikan. Any mar society hin gender studies to komi elo talakam ti first question that came to my mind. As to academic discourse hin okay, some few to a question tanta research komay thotan anta so tuta Dr. Deborah hom kana enin ka shita a PhD thesis kan, and not only Dr. Deborah tun root lal sim sang bungpui tun Dr. Lal Chakim Mar and I'm going to talk I'm going to specifically refer to Mar community or tunso kakaan anlo entan ni komana na chu chataka I critical taka I en hi alatlom mani alatlom ma chun I inkad gender studies hi alatlom ma hi gender in a tam ding chun. First of all zigron hai komi poi mo ve ni cho image ding example pat kapek num chu hi karul high PhD research scholar mo anni khataka pakhat tha ka TMM chu I tun chu conflict umlei khan una meiti ha hi zukrel ka tan ni hu an society thil pakhadan nei tha ka TMM chu magazine an nei chu magazine pakhatan nei ya women's magazine an nei ni kha women's magazine khan nu mei high unexperienced mo khai kha I ansuk lang lakani chu khangdam kha Nethein la mo any mar society han khang magazine khan nethein la like maybe we can express our thoughts, our feelings, and our thoughts, our feelings maybe via poem or articles kama poino or novel form hama poino anjo khangkha neiron in la mo magazine haidam hi ran thein la cho khan I khatan thok khan a meding a discussion komang umtan thei karing ani cho tu shia hinding cho academic ai tia chun academic hin achidang da umno ka for instance college level zuking ai tia college level hin kei kalo tuta ka zukhile I elo azum ding chu ai nei tok no ti ha kai chu ka thang na ni sila mo ka answer ai nei tok no a chun pakhat chulai ai nei tok no ka suggest mum chu tuta MIL paper haidam hin I inkhat women studies dam nei thein la tuta class 9 10 chuchun BA graduation level chang mai ne enta chu khangdam khan women studies hi MIL subject khan like pakhat cho khomni sina poino maybe it can be a collection of essays or a collections of poems or one novel mo khangdam khan ei thein la khan chu academic discourse khom dam ti tin an theding ani chu chun an theding an chu san chu like we can start from now on more it's not yet it's not too alalate no katina san chu 18th century khan tuta any England hai khi civilization lo ma sa hai juk ti ngai ti anni khom kha 18th century an thok khan dam ti tian hun tan ani klom te tian an intana hanan tho the velen ani khom tutan thokhin mo academic discourse in in critical analysis ai la pek no ema khang ding khan chu chu lei chun ai tho ding chun chu khat hi magazine da mine theina society pakhatin mo women's magazine khatak khan ai suffering high pen down in la maybe it can be monthly wise kom disina poino or weekly wise poino chu ding chun mai writer ko mai suk dok bona tu ni chu khalei khan khang khan nei theina chun education level college level kom disina MIL high com women studies high dam hi bel thein la mo kha chu kei ka ting panga khat a la examine tok no critical study a la nei thein one academic discourse hin tuta gender studies ji ha hi khat imai tin reluctancy ela nei na satalu mo ana chu reluctancy khakha ice break thaidan ding pakhat chu khang khan magazine in tranin la literature khatan do khan a suffering high and nole or the kind of injustice or the kind of discrimination gender inequality or imai tin woman perspective anything that comes from woman perspective khai kha note down in la ziktan in like college level high command umtan sin la mo poems collection of poems or essays or novel khangan who introduced in la chungchun dam titin academic discourse khom I elu tan karing ani cho okay thesis imitating scholar high chun cho anung zik tan ana ala klom ani cho critical taka study ela wang ani cho chun sometimes ke khom kalungra la umve lak cho or maybe we don't consider it important enough mo khomanil dim dam kati lakani cho ana chu ana khovel fie dana en chun cho women injustice hi alabono dan chu Mary Wollstonecraft khan 18th century like khan women education here allow nasatakin allow campaign anta women numei hin education they have the right to be educated hi allow fee point santa kha 18th century la ya so not only that Mary Wollstonecraft even she discussed about women injustice and also gender discrimination in many forms to atil discuss he discuss he voice so needs and hin ala relevant of course improvement so numei upliftment hi kay chun chu improvement dam ti chun kati asan chu tu kom in research ka tho amo 64 years vel numei high ana chu hi chu biblical Christian identity ting pangani lei khan kha chu khil chung nong kata avasta lei khan ana chu improvement chu dam ti chung ka mu ana chu still address ala tool and san chu 18th century la ya Mary Wollstonecraft in allow question ta kha voice su ni chen hin question la ni for instance Mahesh Datani khan play phata ji gani chu Twinkle Tara original play chun Twinkle Tara na chu Mahesh Datana he playwright director khomana 20 he athilzik hi 20th century and to tumzi chu voice su ni chen in issue hi thatakin address ala ni no critical takin analyze ala ni no chun discursive writing khom la thlom le tina ni academic discourse khom ala tam tok ma tina ni within a larger perspective macro level khom Indian society larger context khom anla address tarani Mahesh Datani nang zi chu gender discrimination a story to them to shil nong kata nuhmei children mo nuhmei children I kakhanu khan discrimination na sa tak atu zia shilani cho chutaka chun points tam tak hung race ani ho to pan toy tim lesuk presil na mo lesuk shil zau ka ti kha apoi mo ka ti ema hi gender discrimination thuong shila chu nuhmei nu chu conjoined twins and protagonist ka nuhmei le pasalan na khatak khan biologically aki eding kha numei nu ke eding kha pasal pa an pek le mani cho khalei khan numei nu chu being sul handicap hunin ta cho a handicap le khan societal pressure le suffering na sa ta tu ka ana khalai question chu inglei nam anu le pa khan unaccept pa why did they accept more that leg was biologically harsh, but imata why did they privilege pasal pa ingdan privilege am tiha question to gender conditioning iti anu kha gender conditioning mo chinte dan toka colonization of the mindset lungril numei chu hingin umdingani mo so I kha I Simone de Beauvoir ko mashil kha numei hi in ping in women hi in ping phota chun women ni chawti na san chu societal values inung follow numei chu hingin umdingani in ti khan I women ni chawni ti ni cho hakha I anu khom khan anau nu aping sul ha poeti no ni why because gender conditioning alone ni char ma kha I chun Esther Morgan in laws word ta I oya ati theina mo a protest ngam no ni because societal expectation le societal values ka atini chu khan gender conditioning lo char na family khan shi theina umani cho akhalei khan I mang khat I alungru khom khan I ingkat anau mai nu atran ngam ta no ni cho chu I hitaka hin I asan to societal expectation patriarchal norms hai mo khang po kha I ashil lai tha ka ti bek ani to san cho tu ta ai context ai discuss kom areng tu ta Dr. Deborah le Elin hanung discuss kom alan kop vongani cho anu ka gender hitaka hin a question raised to gender conditioning gender discrimination mo khang ha ka chun any hitaka a question raised po hui a society le chun relevant vong no but unrelevant hai chu I nu mei gender nu mei le pasal unaw kar sibling sakhom nu mei hai dit sak bi kan ni na I nu mei hai handicap rak anno le rim sirak khoman I pasal hai privilege pe num na even from station kha khang bel kha ahung question ani cho anato this it is all linked with patriarchal norms and patriarchal structure ahung dino kani cho kha khan I voice this is something that we have to address. This is something that we have to challenge more as a woman. I have mentioned earlier that we have somehow, to some extent, improved, but there are certain issues that need to be addressed more. Khalay kan tuta I mahes data ni hi 20th century ni tuti azik na hilan na ya lalabek no 18th century problems ka voice ni tan hin I 20th century voice ni tan la relevant sar saran chu pasal prestige and pek big na high privilege and pek big na high nu mei nu chu khang khan handicap pa khang khan adam sung na turan ta anu khama na tur thawani alungul na taluni khanga I anau nu I handicap na si chun khanga musit na tam ta atu khai khamo khalei khan I areng ram chu khilta nong ka ta sei talu dingana khalei khan tu ta I amastaka tuta academic discourse ka chu eila tho no li critical analysis ma ila tho phak no chu tho ding chun chu educated women le hiang topic hi discuss a discussion a tool discuss ding chun magazine hai komong tool ta ding khan experience I share ta chun education level khom khan I man introduce collection of essays or poem or something more khan ayung thought na tool chun a second na kha a second na toy te chok azota ding so how receptive are we as a community to criticism so that our custom yes a society here not just in terms of gender issues or like in anything Cajun jo blunder when criticism a lack theme no and we are not willing to listen voice sung man class kalaka importance of listening kahung la kani cho kele ke hum kan question na sa importance of listening a poimo ma mi nan mi constructive criticism ani pek chang including myself imitating we are not receptive team a pride lem katiding a society nu me issue lem hi cho injustice and asani like pasalem chun chu nu me issue actually chu anin nuya mo like anin nui khan thil tam tak shilan chu they are not interested and if they're interested marin pu ke attack nani zu ni chung lo win they could have like highest apex body in Leikan, they could have come up with certain topic about gender related issues. We can organize a seminar or we can organize a workshop. We can discuss about it more. Haka ani dingan ito. Maybe even HSA can come up more. Kay kom HSA vi tokan it tanim kangaya kathena na not only in the field of politics but HSA ay komanastakin I seminar hay organized to make you chun I kangka chun criticism hay kom criticism tak hizo ay la theino hlenin ka shita mo hakatu kay kating pang chu hi ailan chuk tak tuling ka shita I list mean criticism and pek high suggestion advice and pek hi ay listen no chun chu I intika kom change umngai no ngata progress kom umngai no ngata a mabak ding to stagnant society ni tu komine ni zingane hi chu kalo shil ngunta stagnant society ni progressive mind stay ni thain ore because we are not willing to listen, we are not willing to change, we are not willing, we listen and we are not willing to execute it ani no konito hakale khan tu rin po ka hun kashil ni ro se kalom kashil.
Thank you so much, Thelma. Thelma and Ashil, one key takeaway from that is that women should write more. I think that is so relevant. Women themselves need to write more so that our stories and our concerns or whatever reform needs to happen from that perspective. And the second thing is that very important action point she has highlighted is about inclusion of stories of women even in MIL. And that reminds me of this Netflix movie called Kartini. Kartini is a Javanese noble woman who introduced education in the 1910s when women in the Javanese Muslim society were not even allowed to go beyond their household. So I think it reminds me of so much of that. Everyone should watch this Kartini movie. I think it's about the Reformation movement that also happened in the Javanese society. That's my recommendation. That is something that came up. And then I think last but not the least, our exhortation on being a progressive active listener is something our society needs. And along the same line, since Dr. Deborah talked on E.B. Taylor on culture, I'm going to come back a little bit on that because Dr. Deborah is an ethnographer herself. So in your opinion, Dr. Deborah, like how do we draw an appropriate line between respecting culture, but also recognizing appropriately the practices that are actually harmful for women and girls. So, but since we have the paucity of time, if you can kind of summarize in 5 minutes, that will be helpful.
Yes. Thank you so much for the question. Yes, as tuhan kama penalism shiltam takai hong ka tuta tiltam takai hong highlight hai hong ka poi mo ma nakiphat le hunala umchun chu shildinga katia hai homa changa chu kalazuk shil zom ma tuta question hakazuk answer ma khan man nakita first question question pa hong last part of the first question hong shil ka. Can we discard what needs to be discarded based on our experiences at Tihan? Keka experience mo tuhin kung he as a researcher, as an auto-ethnography dito hindi na experience ngay society experience ngay based kung han kung numa customary law anong highlight talay kan pakat ka suksulgen so he man 80 mo tuhin tuta yung hi he bright price 80 kat hi like mar society isolation na umani chak mo munrang chang tuhin western high committee mo chun munrang chang India as a whole high committee bright price and practice to something similar ti ka anay to la bright price ti hi commodity ang intri na uman chi komin a society application that til tam ta umani to hi okay namesake may ani mo bright price here it's just for formality ang community mo ana to the fact is that mo ano le film tu ang kumana in sila ni so anle kay to a question num to exactly film tu iti himana mo what exactly is a joke TV ka ngai tu la ganito film tu na anle film tu na Asian high heel tu ay ngai dan pakhat so ani na tu heavy load dewa atlak thei na dingin atia film tu through kanation to abigin made women chungchang mo in le women chung chang hin khang kha nizat sim na amang thil hitam talun chu bride price ai kami okay formality may ani da may ti chun chu anle pasalle husband and wife in ini anin halna adam kan choksa ini khati ram statement dam analyze tool tanun chu ta panelist Thelman Miss Thelman ong shil tang khan any society tuta statement any hypo hi analyze kha tool talun is mo naki phalam gender stereotyping thum shil kata patriarchy ti thu kham ingta community ve kham shil kata na chu tuta bride price chung chang hen hi man ay tihin commodity antana atloma matamam kay chu ngai na atloma matamam thunin maybe mo I may discarding hong tina khan bride price man tilo hin maybe ngai nat man ti da ngal man mo man dam kha elan thangtir no man chu ngai nat man anole in kung kay na amani tin la san chu bride price component say yan hin thil sang sang ani ni chu mo bride price si on may man tia as a whole I pick to no bride price a analyze chun a components a shang shang uma kha ya kha mi nan lo chang chun mo mana mi nan lo chang chun chu kha I achang tu hai khan in pu ke na su zu le ti kha mo aman ka fa kan nom ti vel kha it brings closer relationship ania khale khan hi bride price ti lo hen mo term dang dam hin substitute in lang ti dam kha ka zup shil nung sila discard vel ti first question ami kha chun in few minutes hung in khat katia tuta panelist in ahung shil ta ang khan kanin shit po chang na chi taka as an ethnographer ti ain kha ta hain galung rila lo to critical thinking mo deep analysis ti dam relearn hi a tool talu ni chon ko feel work ka mu hai hung shil kata a big in any tribal society. If we look at tribal society as a whole, as I mentioned in the first, first under the first question. So when we look at tribal society, and often the comparison is that women are more empowered in tribal society, right? And I like for my PhD, I have gone to different places like DU and all these places. And how do they introduce me? How they introduce my topic as women in in the Northeast, and they would comment like women in the Northeast are more empowered, right? So what I want us to think over is we need to go and look back into what is our analytical framework. Mo hindi naman niya empowered no ti judge naka all so hinghai po imanay to rethink kanito actually tasay ka rethink relearn ay tool nito. So my take is that if we are going to compare tribal society or with the with the status of women that we find in other societies, it's incomparable because tribal society has different social structure. More tribal society ain't kung kay dani asana as a whole Indian society dang Hindu society and Muslim hai kum unsocial structure kakaadangan nito. Akala kan apong lang in women in tribal society hai to female feticide parda system itidim dowry in hoyantin no mo vai dong dakin mazale re he mo vai drug and explanation student hai dai pegen even khang suk la ka mi do ti la kha in hoyantin nom ti dami la kanito ana chu khang kha ani no thilei analyzing a context pe mo ingai to ka huing chanam mo always going back to the basic and analyze it from there khapoi mo taluni chu as a society like ours especially tribal society what is most important, and I have also written a paper on it which is still in process kangai poi mo to what is most important is that it's very difficult to just see, with our naked eye, what are the gender stereotypes. And so, asan to any katitang dowry practice, no more. To female feticide, now pong hai kom, pasalen may i-make edit dan ka, ang tlang put, do now pasal na lang to mo nam in katuan ni mating pa generation to generation shing tuan ni ti ka uma ana to a preference dan ka to hin main land society 80 other Indian societies ay to an no himo, but at the same time to ta kasuk num to hin any tribal society to mu antap talulay kan mo mu ding hin ngai to chatanga we really need to have a very a mindset to relearn the humility to relearn what all we have learned through our socialization 89 toka shila ay til inkim in tuk tira ay hai po po ka ay ngai tu ching chat chat nga yan ito abikin ay ni society to statement ay make statement ay sila hai hin anasani mo nakita kong shield angkan as I have mentioned before, like in tribal societies it's very very difficult to decipher, you know, when we talk about gender stereotype, yeah, discrimination against women or subordination. Okay, it is very much evident in our statement, you know, nung may ini ka tidam ka. You are just a woman, nung may ini ka itidama. Nung may ini ka is a statement, but it has many meanings to it. Mo, mitim ha ito, social construction anti social construction hi kami perspective niya society shi team na dingin kaka til ko society shi bisha men til hi ani dan angin mo logically to pinafi ngai no tilan ni at tun katawa meaning ang ta kai pe kani to tulay nung may ini ka statement to okay logically it is correct nung may kan nom but a meaning ahong lakong ka anasani mo kalay kan any as an ethnographer like experience like in ka research hay kung kan apoy mo ka TMM so any society tribal society ang mu antak lehin mo tayray payangay right, we really need to have that conviction to go and analyze what are the type of gender stereotype, you know, subordination of women we have. So just one last point, okay, regarding my fieldwork. So I did my fieldwork and interviewed the leaders from ZMA, HWA, and KWU. So from there on, what important thing that I found, you know, and discovered is that to him, if we look at, you know, their activities mostly, right? Mostly like we see that okay their activities is mostly around this aspect, they do not touch much of gender issue come alone it hey analyze and high mile discussion in Nepal mo because ZMA HWA KWU they are under this epic the ethnic organizations mo marnu ya ani pakati kuki pakat zomi nilekan until toshim kaka tribe leaders high mo kaka tribe organization high dungzui kana ni payanito. But interesting thing is that when I actually went and interview, you know, I see so many of the women leaders who raises gender issues, you know, but they, you know, they know that this is not the time yet to bring out those aspects. Mo tuna gender issues tak to an example in women leaders hi kom anya interviewan Michelle today told me during my interview that, you know, they are leaders of, let's say, ZMA, HWA, and KWU. But when they actually hold these meetings with the main, you know, this ethnic councils or ethnic organizations, they are made to, you know, go and distribute tea. No, they are expected to go and distribute tea. What exactly is this? A gender stereotype is strong talunits more. Tutulaytun anika officially they are at the same level of decision making. At the same time, opportunity as women, you know, if we have the opportunity, we should speak up. We should not be too scared. We should not be too passive. Tim baka a passiveness and kom imana editun a socialization fongani nakihok to pa kan hunda milapek to timo socialization po mozi patriarchy tivel nam kang explain met kata to po to ni Rosen Kalome.
Okay, thank you so much, Deborah. As we have positive, hunay na ibig no lain question in na hay ka chat box akan hung inton pain la, and if we have time, we'll address to that. But I'm gonna go again straightly to Ellen. I think Ellen has actually opened up the Pandora's box in terms of how, like, you know, we look at the law of the land and our customary laws. But I think this is something, as an example, in the Mar community, that is something that we are gonna talk. So basically, Ellen, given as a legal expert where you handle these cases where people would go either to the traditional court or to our traditional customary law, so do you believe sorry so one thing I want to ask her is that you know, like Ellen mentioned about, there is no gender justice, there is no survivor's justice. So along that lines, do you believe our cultural or customary laws and practices adequately protect and provide justice for women? And based on our experiences, which court should a Mar woman, for example, in distress, approach? A family or a laibung or an inpui court where you hardly have a say, or you have a government, go to the government or the real legal court of the land where you can provide your own evidences. So if she's going to take us through that, which is going to be very debatable at the same time, very interesting. That is something that we want to hear on this Pandora's box.
Oh, thank you for the question. Imo, Ken, boy mo, hilaya issue ding pakat. So he answer, he question, the question to your answer more as a legal experts. Do you think the cultural and customary laws and practices adequately protect and provide justice for women? My answer is simple. More, a patriarchal society, in a patriarchal society where laws are made only by men. More tunay and common. Amar dan hi and row. Amar customary law hi published by the Mar Inqui. I should not. Imo Mar Inqui at soon. We know who are there. A sheet sin taro. No may kasi sul no chun chu pakat panivel chu umroy no may ni mamiru chu. An no kamalonial take kalaw beng varak no accounting kan. Kalay kan pasal dance, pasal customary law sim. At soon mo no may a grievances high and sheet no nito. No may ma chun no may grievances high so a sheet nito. Kalay kan hitaka hinjo kay chun. Ani thay no katia. Asan su tu kamin one-stop center chu chanpur halo shingin ta ita kahin not only marmo tribes sang dang hai kom no may distress anum phat lane an hung lakani. Chuta kachun for example lang iti rape case tam long yusin la. Hinghai hi unreported tam taka umani. Chuchun nupale nupakar kom nisin la an pasal hai hi laibung court kom mo laibung in big remnat chen kom atung no. Asan su i make ding accuse hai hi somewhere family circle mo ayin nai pui hai khalo ni pe khale kan in big ram na ting khana fe pe ancho in big ram na fe pha chu nu mei chu im a thil tur bok kha accuse high punishment ni no le kan a thil tur bok kha in biramin la ham pasal avut bok kha vane ino chun chu kha pa khan most cases at chu khan imiva report mo one stop center imiva report mo sarkar bula hinkin mi mu phautum nan iwa mang mo tin mo khan anni chunga thil thanwa thunglem lakani khale khan a customary law high here but your male centered ani le him no me ta ding chun chu justice provide katinwa ke chu chun no me question ka should Amar women in distress approach what should Amar women in distress approach more family court mo laibung court mo government courts kita kahin no me hai hi mulpo hi ein lawani chu any chu imitating sung commitment zo khaman no eveng society meng eveng le khan mi tam tak hi accuse tam tak khom fria uman ni mo inkat an punishments ding dong lawin an umani khale khan sarkar court hi approach nga min la mo asan chu a customary court sun chu a shil tang khan settlementing chau khan settlementing hoi nga chau khan ami simpe kani le khan enin justice a mu thena ding tak tak chuke ka ngai ta na chun chu government courts ha hi ania ita ka hinchu discrimination umlawin mo inkat imitating nu may asalam kangka kirlo in a rights high as a citizen of India na kita ka silang bukhan ami choice ang pe kanichu chun how to know the brand ong shil ta khana kita ke khompoi mo kati mi ma dowry ti haidam hi mahan ki hom college ka lokai lai khan chu simple da wangai tu chun chu I need to tribal northeast tribals hai chu hingang hi a customary law ve no mo wang ne tin tak dam ana chu amuna ka zuk uma one stop center dam khan ka zuk chang khan chu a reality ha ka hung shi tan ta nu le patam takin naw nu me hain pasalan ne ding phatam an in mun da man zarani thil mo anin som tier ding atule khan tun ei mar da na izuk and comment almeira mo thil how ti ain thoka khum ti hai mo ini mani sorry kazuk shil ting de kana zuk and kati resai blanket thing rem shei pui leidar mo form ti hai mo hangkha dowry hi me ti ding inkhat we are free from dowry ti angin ein ngai tu amiru chu a society a customs kan we implemented kaisun kati ala dowry upon us more she intentionally amani unintentionally amani chu kashino tulem lem chu in elnan sang tal takhre khan nu meitam takhin danang komin pasalan nei lung tangay no sanchu obviously mo tum in langber burara thei talwa somding khom nei lawa pasal va nei chu an num no ding ani chu khalai kham nu mai hai ta ding chun chu a customer lo hi chu alek ka ti me ma chun churing no khom patriarchal centered kati ta khana ki ta kati le khan nu mai hai ta ding khom hin justice a provide no ba ka ke chun chu burden khom asim kati asan chu i kati ang khan na ki han now pasal nei hi ke chu income issue ka lang mo bebe ngano maybe because we have the privilege to study in cities more where people are more broad minded khalai khan issues bebe ka lang mo ngano now pasal equally in ka lang mo la ami ru chu tu a customer lo hai an chun chu ro tu ding pasal mo khalai khan nup nei hi nu puitam tak kein hoven kas kalo handle line to comment ka mo chu fear ai nei ani now pasal ai nei ma chu an nei ma chu unfinished business nei ang deu hinan umani asan chu now nei tak no ang dewa in ngai na dam mo khang dam kha umhlak ani khalai khan not only does it not provide justice but also burden nu mai chunga asi ani ti hi ke ai thok chun kangai dan ani pau chuni rosan kaloma
ole elin lom talo elin inang shil pakat poi model so legality laki shame ang nei laka. So at many of the times cultural guardians or cultural keepers of me at many cases no may. So at the same time, how do we navigate that so I think that needs a very deep introspection for us as a community, as a society. Tika kung hapsan nisin lale thelma ko la he fe no kita thelma kandon nung to like what is our task as leaders, especially from like you are a women leader involving in student organizations, but how do we approach this complexity? Sometimes women are itself the cultural guardians. So how do we make our customs relevant? Even it could be reformation. It should be dynamic. You talk about the being dynamic and static in a society, and about the acceptability of that, because the world keeps on changing, the values and systems it keeps on changing. So how do we navigate this complexity in this changing contextual nature of our society and modernization? So I'd just like to hear your thoughts on that.
Thank you. Am I audible? Am I audible? Okay. Thank you so much, Dennis. Once again, what is our task as leaders and scholars on how we approach the complex task of making our traditions and custom relevant, dynamic, and acceptable with changing values and system? My simple answer would be change, to accept change. Change hi accept no tun chu accept tum no in la khom globalization, privatization hi hin a reality ta a lived reality ta hinga hin amung chim ta mo. For instance, privatization hi le hin, globalization, privatization hi le hin nu mai tam tak khom job opportunities kamang umtanta khang khan nu mai chun education as compared to 1950 1960 education especially nu mai hai e hung pung pe ni dam ti tin mo khakatak khan privatization hai le khan job opportunities ang umtanta khan nu mai hi. At first we were confined to the narrow household mo, four walls antika khan we were confined there. Tun chu public space ay umtananta sin hai private teacher anole maybe in a company or like let's say in village zuktin la shop mo hi standalone shop ni sin la anole teacher, private teacher, government teacher nu mai khom na satakin I sinayung thotan ta khan initially we were confined more within household, but now we have moved beyond that to public space ay umtanan ta cho kakhan kakan chu ka khil na san tak chu family structure un thleng halan ta khan ni dang chu nu mei khan I research klo thona chu 1960 high 1970 chen khom kha chun pu lk boma novel mangai in li a novel kha 1960 1950 1960 lai hun societal landscape kha a reflect ani chu a custom a tradition hai kha tak kom kha nu mei position kha a endan kha le nu mei position kha ching takin I kha novel khana reflect ve ni chu like ama kha nu mei hai khan chu they're happy they're content more anni kha like they are not interested in education and moreover educated women kha hun like and they were not perceived as feminine thing in kha minan hope hurani chu because of their wisdom because of their knowledge khalei khan khakhataka anuha anukhom khan I khanga household chores atho khanga ina umtok kha she was content with that more khang khan nu mei hai kha I allo ni chu 1950 60 70 hun lai vel khan ana chu khang khan kakanu mei position na tu chu damti ti chu nei hun thanglin ta ana chun katiang khan a society he change a accept ngam non so accept ngam no in la khom ke chun chu hi solution a tradition le a culture a relevant a relevant thading le chu chun a relevant thaya a dynamic le in khat I value system in kim khai kha thadaka relevancy le aho anei thading chun change accept to a tulan so a tun a change hi accept har side talun so accept no chu khatiang khan nu mei hai education anu sang deu sin private hai nung thotan ta khang khan family structure hun thlenga family structure hun thleng family relationship hun thleng no kan ta cho chun family relationship chawan no husband man and wife relationship common thleng no ka akan society sunga khom human relationship hun thleng no kan ta khan effect tho ni chu khali khan a customary laws for instance hing hai komi if what common kalozi kan ta article a revise no in khat a enthat no chu revise I enthat no chun chu I made ding Aila bui de din for another instant cyber tu lai cho cyber crime hai komang umnok ta khang kha with regards to women issue kom ni sin la customary laws ai ne yam di hana ki nu ma le alien kan don sin la hang nam kha I koviel in changlin pain and kai tuta ka PhD thesis ka lo en komin 10 years ticket tin komin difference char charan chu tuta Dr. Deborah Hamana bulkan ang shil khan mo tlomai na ti dam kha ei thu le hlan no tun chu mobile through da mai thlom ngai ta Facebook information ei pass da mai thlom ngai ta vehicles car dam atloni lo mangtir khang da mai thlom ngai ta thlom ngai na kha I thu le hlani lo win khovelin herdani zil khan I thlom ngai dan kha amots kha hun thleng pen ta cho ila thlom ngai jing ana chu amot and means kha adangan ta chu yangin social la che khom khovelan her takhlana herdan I thul halon social media I introduce ta kha I mang tangkai I mang tangkai pe han I thlom ngai lan ta cho kangan tin la ya thango system tun to thango we through phone call thango system more mode of communication has changed initially we employ traditional means of communication but now we have started using phone or social media such as Facebook or emails or etc mo hang ka ai mang tanan ta cho kang khan khalei khan yang in nang in num no la che khom khoveli hem dan khan accept a tool ve ni mo khalei khan to accept change apoi mo ka te ma as a student leaders kaloni laka khang hong khan kai ka personal life khom na sa takin ka khat tokin experience suffering ka nevia ing ti khuna man chukom lazik dok kata khang kha tujun as a scholar kom hi tuta ka answer ding tu we have to accept change tuta nu me issue kom hi whether we like it or not mo tun pasal hai kom nastakin static mo ka ngai dan ka thleng thai nu me tu chuan ni yang in ti hai hi pasal abikin pasal hai ngai dan thleng thai lo le as a society patriarchal norms it is naranin any a society ai authority hai hi pasal in unhandled de wong ne I mean, of course, we have this nu make poll or group so but then they are actually not very powerful more even in the domain of charge representative chun umana chu head chu anchel hi wangani khalei khan I khat khakha head a leader patriarchal norms hi a question tana hinga hi anni hin anni homan any nu mai command accept ta chun anni komin leadership top leadership in unchanged tool ani hi culture hi a change ani it culture hi ke khom nidang kalo hi timeless ten kalo til kana chalo ni no ni cho I tun for instance unu mai context lo khom ngai nai ti hai dam hi voice sun ni chen hin ei tho cha pile puhan pre christianity an to kalo umani ei tho cha ka hung trace tunga every decade in more than means of performing klomngai na hadang char ani cho so whether you accept it or not khoviel fe dan khan khoviel a thil dang every decade technology tun chu katiang khan social media da mani klomngai ta chun automobile and all thil dang hai klomngai pe mo khang khan lo thelon change accept tool jo accept tool as a leader chun as a scholar command chun as a community command accept tool accept pa accept no command a structure hi ankleng ta tho tun chu family structure man kleng na san ta katiang khan nu me hi tam ta ai su ta lei khan mo nidang nam chu education da man phal no ni nu me hi and we were not encouraged and me encourage ngai no tun chu khovelin kleng dam lam ta dan so 1950 60 70 lai khan nu me educated kha unloaded ngai no ni but now to some extent tun chu dam ti khan nu me education educated do ha me accept nan ta cho khale khan we have to accept change more to become more relevant chun culture hi aesthetic ti hi chu ke chu ka pom no mo a phasinga ana chu a tradition hai khom a phasing hi generation a fiana chu a more than means like uncleansing khale kan we have to accept change di ha ka final to ta question ka answer nan ro so thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Thelma. So I know we don't have much time and there are still many unanswered questions. So I'm requesting Ruth if we can do another panel because I'm not in a position to continue. But I think from our discussion, there are key recommendations that come in, which are very important. And I think this is something that we should note down as a community. First of all, we need to examine selective change due to modernization, especially for women and gender justice. And secondly, our customary law needs to go beyond settlement. It should stand on the principle of justice and fairness. And the third key recommendation that comes from our panelists is that women should write more across sectors for more discourse, both academic and non-academic. And also the other very important recommendation, fourth one is that we should include gender topics in MIL subjects. The fifth one is that women voices need to be more amplified and inclusively taken into consideration. And last but not the least is that there need to be a legal space hand in hand with customary law. So those are certain things that has come out very strongly from the discussions that we have. But as we know that it's not the end of the conversation that we have. There are lots of things that we need to talk about bride price among the Zona Lab cultures. I think there are certain people who has actually taken a progressive step like in Mizoram, but in other places we are still yet to look on what kind of these spaces needs to be modernized, what kind of these spaces needs to be looked at. So I think that's something that we need to delve more on. But I think this is not the end of the conversation. We are going to continue this conversation. But I would request if we have this discourse, not just in online, but among the spaces that we have is something that I would like to highly encourage all of us. So now I give back our time to Ms. Deborah for her closing remark on this discussion for today.
Thank you so much, everyone, especially the panelists and the moderator. And I'm so sorry that we are running out of time. Discussion point to pakatela na ya chu let's keep it for the next time. We will get back after few weeks. We hope that the panelists will also be able to free themselves. So it's very, very interesting. Interesting talua. It will be very helpful for everyone. Katini voice una ishil hypo po himo ay interest lane. We are running out of time, but we will try to see each other after a few weeks and and continue with the discussion that we were not able to do it today, and the topic that we left behind today. Tulay chun hi ailung rin lo ngai tu ngai ta ing im tu huna next few weeks ai tho huna chu voice huna ai sil hai po kha ai sil man no hai cheta choli lawin participant hai khomin hun nei tangan ta ni hai khomin hi panelist hai le in discuss thei dan ding lam pui khai hung zong ding ania apoi mo em apoi mo ji choi shi ta ana chu i kasil num tak chu akar chang chu nu mei hi im i power nei tum angda min mingai nan ne ya amirok chu hi pasal le i pasal chungai tum ni lawin pasal hai le opportunity same opportunity ne as a human we have all the rights ti kha ai khek pui tum takani len khang ang misinterpretation hai kha i suk bo thei da ding chun chu i comment hai khom khanei lo ti ma bright price hai da man no le platform awareness hai da mi thoron in lai ta na chu ai thoa rules na practice jinga ai thoa chu mi hi ai hik zo no mani ding ti kha i question lin ta ko lein ni tho chu ai tho jinga ne ai thei ang tok chun chulei chun hingang online platform hai da man no le one to one discussion na mani chat group dam hi sima hinga discuss thei dan ding lam pui hom kai la hong ai tu pe ding ni rosen thank you everyone who participate those who have participated panelists hai kan lom bek chewa moderator hom kan loma chulain we will get back after a few weeks voice na atop chana thanghai khom kan lom em chewa next side ho phat cho in ming hai khom kan lon chik wonga direct in a link khung thon kan chewa chun panelist hai khom hi an milo free pe ngai dingin ngen nai zuk sim no kani thank you everyone
Thank you all. Thank you so
Bye.
much, everyone. Thank you.
thank you bye
Thank you.